Hello there.
Welcome back, Fanfield family. On today's episode of Out of the Spotlight, we're going to look at one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, Durge. Now, a few weeks ago, I asked you guys to vote on whether I should cover the Old Republic bounty hunter Calo Nord or the absolute beast that is Durge. You voted, so here we are.
I love democracy.
Durge exists in both Disney canon and in Legends, so we'll be looking at elements from both. For example, Durge's early life is only covered in Legends. I'll mostly focus on Legends, however, as that's the primary source. Let's get to it. Durge was born roughly 2,000 years before the Clone Wars. A member of a rather rare species, the Gendai, Durge was borderline immortal. In this millennia-long life, Durge killed countless people, won countless fortunes, and lost even more. He fought in many wars and experienced horrible things. But of everything he loved and hated, he hated nothing more than the Mandalorians. Durge left his homeworld after seeing bounty hunters in action. Enamored with the idea of the bounty hunting lifestyle, he set out into the galaxy on his own, training under a variety of expert bounty hunters of the era. He wandered, killing what he could, until he met a Mandalorian training master named Jia. Jia was more than a fellow hunter to Durge. He was Durge's master, his mentor, a friend, almost a father figure, and Jia taught Durge everything he knew of Mandalorian tactics and battle skill. Durge was, to say the least, a prodigy. He naturally picked up on techniques and tactics, adapting to any situation, any threat. To further advance his lethality, when Durge and Jia were approached by an Outer Rim cyberneticist about 500 years before the Clone Wars offering to augment them with cybernetic upgrades and armor, he accepted. Through a lengthy and painful process, Durge and Jia were fused into special suits of armor, though the cyberneticist had a bit of trouble with Durge's naturally regenerating body. When the two recovered, they tried sparring with another of the Doctor's subjects, but before the bout could become lethal, the Doctor informed them that they had a real target. A clan of Mandalorians, loyal to Ung Cusp, an enemy of Durge and Jia, had broken into the facility, trying to recover a Sith artifact that the Doctor had stolen. To repay their debt to the Doctor for the cybernetic upgrades and armor, the two went to fight. Jia was mortally wounded by a thermal detonator thrown by one of the Mandalorians. The one person in the galaxy that Durge truly cared about was dead. Durge slaughtered the remaining Mandalorians and swore that he'd have his revenge, and he headed for the planet Mandalore. He was unfazed by the many attempts on his life by the Mandalorians, the Sith, the Blood Boilers of Kragus, and a plethora of others over the next few hundred years. During the new Sith Wars, Durge fought against multiple Jedi, and with every battle he learned their techniques, how to counter them, and how to kill them. To avoid the Jedi hunting him down after the Sith lost the war at the 7th Battle of Ruusan, Durge went into hiding, though he continued to hunt, using various aliases, and he amassed a fortune from his bounty hunting career. About a century before the Phantom Menace, Durge was hired to kill the leader of the Mandalorians, Mandalore, a job he accepted with glee. Durge accomplished his mission. Let me reiterate that. Durge successfully killed Mandalore, the leader of the Mandalorians, the strongest Mandalorian of the era. While Durge did succeed in eliminating his target, he was captured by the Mandalorians, who tortured him. Durge's mental state wasn't the best after almost 2,000 years of life and losing the only person he truly cared about, but this torture pushed him over the edge into full-blown madness. Durge did escape the Mandalorians, however, but it took him almost a century to regenerate, and 60 of those years were spent buried alive. When he emerged shortly after the start of the Clone Wars, Durge's hatred for the Mandalorians had only intensified, and he was dismayed to learn that the majority of the Mandalorians had been wiped out, simply because he wanted to be the one to kill them. However, when Durge learned about the Grand Army of the Republic and its origins as clones of Jango Fett, he gleefully joined Count Dooku and the Confederacy of Independent Systems so he could kill Jango Fett's clones. Dooku assigned Durge the task of hunting down the young Boba Fett, and 2 months into the Clone Wars, he found Fett on Tatooine. During their game of cat and mouse, Boba tricked Durge into shooting a shipment of explosives, blowing Durge to pieces. Durge, of course, survived, and within a few days he was back working for the CIS. Alongside Asajj Ventress, Durge tested a chemical weapon on the Gungans of Naboo, but while they were preparing a larger-scale attack, a small Jedi strike team arrived which he and Ventress fought. Ultimately, the chemical gas attack was foiled, infuriating Durge, who killed the clone trooper Alpha-17 who was with the Jedi, and swore to kill Anakin Skywalker who had injured him. On Kata, Durge fought 5 Jedi, luring them into a trap alongside Ventress, and despite being outnumbered, Durge managed to indirectly kill one Jedi with an explosion, and then threw another Jedi into lava, burning off his own arms in the process. He killed a third by using lava to destroy a catwalk and plunge him into the lava below. Ventress killed the 4th Jedi, leaving only Kenobi, who escaped. This wasn't a problem, as Dooku had instructed Durge and Ventress that Kenobi must survive. A few months later, on Munilinst, Durge was given command of a squad of IG Lancer droids and led them against the Republic forces, resulting in a clash with Kenobi. Durge beat the hell out of Kenobi, but Kenobi gave as good as he got, and eventually he managed to cut Durge in half, and, thinking Durge was dead, left him. Durge recovered rather quickly and immediately headed for the headquarters of the Banking Guild where the CIS forces were being coordinated, and he once again engaged Kenobi and the clone commandos with him. The clones briefly overwhelmed him with blaster fire and a rocket launcher explosion. Durge retaliated, his armor destroyed, and took advantage of his body's natural form to strike back, killing several of the commandos with an almost casual swing of his arm? Yeah, let's go with arm. With the majority of the commandos out of the way, Durge lashed out at Kenobi. Without his armor, Durge was much less restrained. His attacks against the Jedi Master are far faster, stronger, and more unpredictable, not to mention having much more range. After a brief annoyance from the nearby clones, he pounced on Kenobi and pulled him inside of his body in an attempt to crush him to death. While inside Durge, Kenobi used Force Repulse, basically a massive omnidirectional force push, and blasted him apart. It seemed as though Durge was dead, but as Kenobi examined his helmet and left the building, Durge had already started to slowly pull himself back together. Within 2 months, he was back on his feet, and Dooku sent him adventurers to the Trenchant space station, where the pair encountered General Grievous. After a brief but fierce battle, Grievous was able to decapitate Durge. For anyone else, this would, of course, be fatal, but Durge is, as the kids say, built different. On Dooku's orders, Durge's head was recovered, and after a brief stint in a Bacta tank, he fully regenerated. In the Mbardi prison, Durge instigated a riot, intending to attract Jedi to kill, and when Jedi Masters Plo Koon and Kit Fisto arrived, Durge engaged the pair. Even after both of his arms were cut off, he was able to subdue the two, but they were saved when a prisoner shot Durge in the chest, surprising him and giving the Jedi Masters enough of an opening to trap Durge in the prison's lower levels. Fisto claimed, however, that it wouldn't hold Durge for long. As the end of the Clone Wars drew near, Durge lured Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker into a trap on Drama Corps' ship, the rival of Zist, one of Durge's allies. After a brief battle, including a thermal detonator to injure Kenobi and Durge beating the hell out of Kenobi again, Anakin shredded Durge with shards of metal guided by the Force. Of course, this was little more than a minor annoyance to Durge. Durge was physically stronger than Anakin, but he was severely injured when Anakin used the Force to direct dozens of explosives at him. The series of blasts tore off Durge's helmet and sent him into a feral rage, which Skywalker exploited, forcing Durge into an escape pod which was then ejected and guided by Anakin into a nearby star, finally ending the absolute beast of a warrior. Durge was aggressive when he was young, and as he aged, that aggression grew into nothing short of pure, barely restrained bloodlust. Durge's species, the Gendai, had a tendency to develop psychosis due to their extremely long lives, and Durge's was further exacerbated by his many near-death experiences, as well as his torture at the hands of the Mandalorians. He hated the Mandalorians because of that torture, but more so because they killed his friend and mentor Jiang. Durge was unusual even among other Gendai. Most Gendai were peaceful and believed in a philosophy of perfection of permanence, which professed that all change is an illusion. As such, they believed that taking an active role in anything is pointless and detrimental. Durge as an individual, and the Gendai species as a whole, preferred to operate alone, but could be convinced to join others for the right reasons.
That is a Gendai. They do not often ally with other species.
As a Gendai, Durge was huge, nearly 10 feet tall, and easily several hundred pounds of pure muscle. He had no hair, sharp, powerful fangs, vivid yellow eyes, and below the head, his entire body was a writhing mass of tentacles. The skin on his head was a mottled gray. Like many other Gendai, Durge squeezed himself into bipedal armor, allowing him to pass as more common species at a casual glance. I cannot overstate just how much of a physical threat Durge and his species are. They can effortlessly lift and throw adult humans with one hand. Further, we've seen Gendai barely react to impalement and dismemberment, In Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Cal Kestis stabs and then slices off General Ravis's arm, and he just casually picks it up and reattaches it.
Jedi. You're a bold one. This is for me.
The Gendai lack a heart, lungs, or any vital organs really, which means they're very hard to kill. There were only two ways to actually kill a Gendai: total vaporization, like what happened to Durge, or complete destruction of the brain. Durge was a match for Jedi Knights and even Jedi Masters. Between his Gendai physiology and his advanced armor, he could hold his own against pretty much anyone he came up against. His ability to regenerate made him almost impossible to actually kill, short of complete atomization such as by throwing him into a star. Gendai like Durge had incredible reflexes and sensory capabilities, to the point of feeling a human heartbeat from up to 200 meters. His reflexes were fast enough to almost effortlessly spear a clone trooper off his speeder bike with his lance while he himself was also riding at high speed in the opposite direction. He claimed that to him, even Jedi seemed like they were moving in slow motion. He was even fast enough to joust with Obi-Wan on speeder bikes, and while we don't actually see their clash, it's clear that Obi-Wan got hit and Durge didn't, again showing those incredible reflexes. His durability was also nothing to scoff at, able to survive a speeder crash and subsequent explosion with no visible reaction at all. Without a heart, the Gendai's circulatory system worked by muscle contractions to push blood through the body, and because of this, they could simply shut off the blood flow to an injured area to prevent any blood loss. Durge was insanely physically strong. He was able to casually catch a speeder bike as it flew towards him and then swing it like a club. He was also strong enough and durable enough to not only shrug off heavy blaster fire, but while being shot, pull the zip lines that were attached to him to drop the clones riding on them. Durge had the benefit of thousands of years of combat experience, making him an incredibly dangerous fighter no matter who he was up against. He had quite a few cybernetic implants that let him use his armor more efficiently, almost as though it was a part of his body. His armor's targeting system was directly linked to his optic nerves, and the armor was designed to actually increase balance and agility despite its weight. The symbol painted on his chestplate was intended to resemble his mentor Jiaying. With his armor removed, he could even harden and sharpen parts of his body to form blades, or, more commonly, a claw-like appendage. The Gendai could either regenerate or reattach lost limbs, and that, along with the above-mentioned lack of internal organs, made them insanely hard to kill, leading to their reputation of immortality. He carried a pair of oversized heavy blaster pistols comparable in power to a standard blaster cannon, a blaster rifle, a spiked flail, an energy bolus. He was incredibly precise with his weapons, even over long distances while moving at high speeds. Ironically, much like the Mandalorians he hated so much, his armor had many weapons built in. He had wrist-mounted rapid-fire flechette launchers, a wrist-mounted flamethrower, poison dart launchers, a pair of wrist-mounted energy shields that could block lightsabers, much like several Mandalorians of the Clone Wars and beyond, and, of course, a jetpack. All the cool kids have jetpacks. He was also given a Nova Sword space superiority fighter by the CIS as his personal transportation. Durge's name comes from the English word dirge, which is a lament for the dead, especially at a funeral rite. This fits the character, because if he sets his sights on you, you're gonna need someone to sing a dirge for you. Durge was created specifically for the 2003 Clone Wars series. He was voiced by Darren Norris, and while he has no speaking lines, he does have a maniacal laugh. His unarmored design was clearly influenced by the 1988 film adaptation of the iconic manga series Akira. Durge is very reminiscent of Tetsuo's appearance near the end of the movie, especially in the moments before Obi-Wan blasts him apart. There are a lot of Akira references in 2003's Clone Wars. His species name of Gendai is likely a reference to the creator of the 2003 Clone Wars series, Genndy Tartakovsky. Before we finish, I'd just like to address something I've seen asked here and there. Why wasn't Durge chosen as the clone template instead of Jango Fett? With his insane physical attributes, wouldn't he have been ideal to make an unstoppable clone army for Sidious to use to overthrow the Republic? Well, no. There are a few issues here. First, Durge was buried alive for the beginning of the Clone Wars. He only reemerged after Jango Fett's death. Second, even if he had been around, the Republic clone troopers were genetically modified to be more docile and implanted with a chip in their brain to make them obey Order 66 without question when it was given. Gendai genetics and physiology are confusing at the best of times, even for a species of master cloners like the Kaminoans, and it's quite possible that they wouldn't have been able to engineer clones of Durge in the same way. Finally, and perhaps most important when considering the purpose of the clone army, Durge was incredibly independent. There's a high chance that even with genetic alteration to make clones more docile, they'd still be very aggressive to allies. Further, we've seen that Durge by himself can handle several Jedi at once. An entire army of him would even be a threat to Sidious, and Sidious didn't want any pawns on the board that he couldn't wipe away with a casual gesture. And that, my fan-fueled friends, is Durge. I absolutely adore Durge. In my opinion, he is a fantastic addition to Star Wars, a character that really poses a threat to the Jedi, that can go toe-to-toe with the best the galaxy has to offer, and just get back up and keep going. I imagine that there are 3 words that keep the few people in the Star Wars galaxy who know about the Gendai up at night. Gendai, Sith Lord. Can you imagine all that durability, physical strength, and borderline psychosis complemented with the dark side of the Force? What do you think about Durge? Would you like to have seen more of him? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I love making these videos, so I hope you enjoy watching them. If you haven't already, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It takes 2 seconds for you, and it really does help the channel out. Our next Out of the Spotlight episode will look at a viewer-requested character, so stick around for that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.